welcome to another live demonstration. So today, February the 16th, is the start of the Chinese New Year, and this year it's the year of the dog. So, to celebrate that, the SAA have set the challenge of painting a dog throughout the year, and there'll be different articles of how to do long-haired, short-haired, and different aspects of painting the dog. So I thought I would celebrate by painting a dog. This is Steve. This is Nikki's dog who works in the office. He's a Puggle, so he's a Pug cross Beagle. And you'll notice this time I've got a lot more colours, a few more brushes. I'm going to take a little bit more time, still have fun, because I think having fun is a really important aspect of any painting. Even if you're selling it, if you've not had fun doing it, I don't think you put your whole personality, or it just doesn't always work for you. So have fun, practice for play, just for pleasure, or even if you are selling your work. So what I'm going to do is I've drawn out and sketched quite detailed, because for me, I'm going to be using watercolour. I actually quite like to see the lines underneath. Some people don't, and that's easily, you can take those back. But I actually quite like the drawing aspect underneath. I think it's just part of the process. I'm just going to use an eraser. I don't normally, especially in workshops, give people an eraser, because what they do is they draw something and then rub it all out. But what I want to do is I'm just taking back some lines I feel are a bit too strong, because I'm going to use those quite light, and I'm also just adding a couple more guidelines for myself to know where I want to go. If I can't see it, I do tend to lose. Doesn't matter, because I've got the picture in front of me.
Anita.
Yes.
Nikki is actually watching. She says hello.
Hello, Nikki. She did say she would tune in.
And hello
but
from Steve.
Steve and Nikki are both watching, so I hope I do it some justice. Yeah, a little bit disappointed myself, because I thought I was born in the year of the dog. So I was quite happy. I could have told you all about being born in the year of the dog. Find out I'm actually not. Because even though my year is the year of the dog, because the Chinese New Year starts in February, I fall just into the year before. So only this week I found out I'm actually a rooster. How that affects me, I don't know. How my life plan will change, no idea. But literally this week I found out that I'm actually not a dog, I'm a rooster. What are you, Gary?
I'm a rabbit.
Gary's a rabbit.
A wascally rabbit.
Okay, so let's get started with painting. So I'm using a natural hairbrush, and I don't always, but I'm going to be doing some nice wet techniques, and I do feel that when I'm covering a larger area with wet, I need the right kind of brush, and the natural hairbrush is really suited for this. So using the SAA watercolour paint, starting with raw sienna. And to be honest, a lot of the colours will do the job without me having to add other colours, which is really nice. So I'm just going to put a very wet wash on, just so it gives me an idea. Actually, I'm not going to be too precise. I'm going to just whack on some colour. And you'll notice that I am going over the dog, because what it does is it ties the background and the foreground together. I'm going to be a little bit careful in some areas, just to keep some light. And again, the darker areas, doesn't really matter. I've gone over with the yellow. And at the background, I'm going to put some yellow in, but you'll see I'm going to be a little bit more careful, because I want to keep highlights. And the great thing about painting in watercolour is the highlight is already there. It's there, preserved through the paper. So I don't know if you can see that, but I can. This is very light wash in the background. It's just taking all that colour through. But what you can see is I've left those white areas, and that's already created the light areas already. So while that's still wet, I'm going to drop in some burnt sienna. Maybe if I had labelled the colours on my palette, it might be a little easier to know what colours I'm using. To be honest, it doesn't really matter. I can see what works and what doesn't. And if I put a different colour in, that's part of the surprise. So at the moment I'm working quite loosely, just adding colour. Just taking that real scary, where do I start phase away. I'm going to be working by lots of layers, which are called layering or glazing. So I've got quite a number of transparent colours, but I've got some opaque colours which I'll talk about as well, because they will help me just finish. So Steve is a short-haired dog, which is actually making it quite easy for me to be able to paint. I'm not going to be overly worried by the texture of the fur, because I find the watercolour tends to do it itself. So while that is still wet, I'm just going to change brush. Need a little bit more control. Again, still this natural hair. I'm going to go in with indigo. Now this is a transparent colour. So again, it's another layer. And now I can just drop in a little bit of shadow. What I do find is this dries quite light, and I will need to go back into it. See, I've lost a lot of that orange colour, so I might have to come back in, pick it up. Yeah, it's not quite the colour of the dog, but I'm using the dog as a reference. What I'm doing is I'm just... So this is probably starting to dry a bit. Lovely dark muzzle and nose, eyes dark, and around the eye is dark. For me, I'm actually just plotting. I will start to, what I want to do is just control this a little bit more. So just again, like I say, plotting where the colours are. He's got dark patches on his ears. And I'll go in with a much more closer colour to the brown, or it's almost black, but I think it's very dark brown. But I like the colours dark on its paw. Okay, so I might go back in with a little bit more burnt sienna, and then I'm going to dry. Just add a little bit more colour because I've lost. And I like quite strong colours, which I just need to sometimes help control. But you can see there, by just adding a little bit more colour, how that's just made him ping a little bit more. Still a bit wet, so I'm having to make sure I'm adding some stronger colours. The tail, the back. So I'm just thinking about where I would like to see colours. Not always the colours that's on the animal, but where I'd like to see a bit more colour. And if you saw there, my brush was getting a little bit spiky. That is because it's starting to dry. Natural hair brushes hold a huge amount of water, but also when they dry, they tend to lose their point. Lots of easy ways to solve it. Make sure your brush is very wet. So wet the brush, but take the drops off. I often take a bit of water from the belly because I don't need it too much. It will hold its point wonderfully, and actually when you're using it, twist. Keep the twist and you will keep the point. When it starts to see the hairs like that, it's because it's drying out. Okay, so I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to dry this. So let me just have a, if I keep fiddling with it, I'm going to get mud. So I need to let it dry to be able to go on to the next stage. So if I give it a quick blast. That should be enough. What that actually reminds me was earlier I had a painting on watercolour paper which had bowed and cockled a little bit. So what I did was I sprayed the back with water, turned it over and dried it, and actually you could just actually see it go and go flat. So there's a tip for a slightly bowed or cockled watercolour paper. I'm using a 425 with this, but you can still see it still doesn't quite cockle. Cockle is that really buckling, but it does bow a little bit. And that's normal. The paper's absorbing the water. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to think about my colours. So back in with the yellow. Now this area I want to be a little bit less detailed because he's running. So the original image isn't great because it's really difficult unless you're a really great photographer. Getting a nice clean picture of a running dog is hard. So I think Nikki's done a great job. But like I say, it's a bit blurred, but actually I might use that. I can see the details, I can see the face, I can see where his character, and I love the movement. Just one thing I need to do that's just bothering me is here. I wanted to keep quite light, but unfortunately I've put colour on it. So what I can do is I can take it back. If I don't do it now, I will forget, and then I'll lose just that light quality. Just there. Just clean water. Just take it back. This is now swapped to the synthetic brush. Because I have a little bit more control and I need less water flying about. And you can see there, that's gone back and brought back the light, which is fabulous. So let's get on with a bit of painting. Just going to think about the dog. The tail moves round in a curl on his back here. I'm not going to overly be detailed because you'll see in a minute I'll take it back. But I want to just move this way forward. I'm going to be a little bit more control. Just put a little bit of colour under the tail. So still only use 3 colours at the moment. And you can see how much lighter that indigo dried. Sometimes it's frustrating because you do want it, you've got to remember it's a transparent colour, then it does really go back. But sometimes you want a really nice dark colour, and I'll talk about that later when I start to move forward. Don't know what I'm doing here, that's not working, so I'll leave it. If an area's not working, move on. So let's have a look at mixing. Don't quite like that yellow, but going to mix it with the yellow, just strengthening, another layer to strengthen, bringing out a few details, but I'm not overly worried about this side at the moment, or at any other time, to be honest. I think it will just work itself out. So working backwards, looking at where the lights and darks are. So you can just see I'm still using the same colours. What I'm doing is I'm just starting to make these a little bit stronger. So he's running with his paw curled round. Comes round here. I know the colours will lighten, but what I'm trying to do is get a different texture. So this area is going to be a lot softer because he's moving forward towards you. He's going to get much sharper and crisper, and the face is going to be really the feature. So they've got strong little bodies. I know because my mother-in-law's got a pug and Lhasa cross, and he's a strong little beast. He has that little stance, those strong little arm muscles here. So just showing the characteristic shape of the shoulder. Now here I've lost some of the darkness, but I'm sure it's going to now come back on another layer. Yes, I'm putting the same colour over again, but I'm starting to strengthen. Remembering I've moved away from there because I was fiddling with it. I didn't think it was working, but actually looking at it now once it's dried, I actually think it worked. So this is something you need to do with watercolour. Don't keep going, oh, let me try a bit, let's try a bit. Actually leave it. A lot of the time, it paints itself, which is one of the great things I love about this medium. So here, just going back in, because this is going to have more characteristics. So his paws curling over, and you can see his dew claw here, coming forward. So all I'm doing is I'm dabbing off some colour and just using it, the colour that's on the page, to move. And you'll see I'm being a little bit sharp. And this is where I'd lost that light. And by lifting it off, which is a technique, I've managed to bring it back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a darker colour for the paws and a bit more shadow. So the indigo I put on first, lovely colour, and I use it a lot, but it wasn't giving me the dark shadows that I needed. So I'm going to start to bring back. Also, what I'm also doing by jumping around is I'm allowing areas to dry so I can go back into them if I need to. So put the colour on, a bit too sharp, so make sure it moves into. So, like I say, I like these silver brushes now for this a little bit more control. And you'll see I keep dabbing my brush. This is to get a point back, but to just give me that little bit of... I was training the other day, and I get the girls to try different products, but what I did notice was they didn't have good techniques. So they maybe try watercolours, you know, testing, doing swatches, see what they do. But at first I was letting them just do it how they feel comfortable with. No problem with that. But I noticed they didn't have very good technique with their water control. So they're picking up too much, and they weren't getting the full colour range that you can from a watercolour. So this time I was giving them more tips on how to control, how to have skills using the brush and the water. So it's not just being able to put paint on, it's the skill with your tools as well. Yes, good brushes help, but to be honest, I think being able to use them, being able to move them around, learn different ways of holding the brush. So do you need the tip, or do you need the edge? How wet do I need it? And all of this is practice. But so it's not just the paint you're practicing with, it's the colours. And I was really very impressed by just a little bit of instruction, how different their marks they were making, how different the colours looked, by just a little bit of introduction on how to add the water, how much water, how to do a swatch. Okay, I think I've had enough fiddling with that, but you can see now how much darker that is, so I'm liking that. I'm going to bring that through into here.
Mind your head, Anita.
Sorry. So, yeah, that's the rabbit talking. It's funny. So I don't know, I have had a little look about the Chinese New Year. Not had a huge amount of time to look, but like I say, I have just, after getting over the disappointment that I'm actually a dog, that I am a rooster. So I think alongside the SAA challenge, it'd be good to, paint a dog, but where do you start? What I would suggest is don't start with the whole dog to start with, because I can probably, if it's your first time, I'll probably see that you'll get discouraged, going, my shape's not right, oh, it doesn't look like who I'm supposed to be painting. So, like I say, practicing with your tools, practicing with your paint, why not, sorry, I'm getting engrossed in my painting, I couldn't talk and paint at the same time. Why not choose an area like the nose? So do different noses. You've got long-nosed dogs, short-nosed dogs, short-haired dogs, so how the hair goes around the nose. All these things would just help with observation. I think a lot of the painting is observation. It's not always the actual painting process, it's how you've seen. So now I'm just looking about here. So this painting, you can see I'm taking a little bit more time. So I think I'll finish this area here, we'll take a break, and then I'll work on the face. I'm enjoying this, so I probably forget to say anything, so Gary might shout at me. I don't always get time to do something a little bit more detailed, because I'm often trying to show you quite quickly, different skills, different techniques. Didn't like that, so it didn't work. But how you can use a brush just to bring things back when it's not quite there. And again, I move backwards to create a much darker tone under here, where his other leg is. Now I want this to be a little lighter, because I want it to kind of fade into the background, but I might have to do that at the end, and I'll show you a tip with that. Okay. So back with what I found was the better colour. So put the colour on, move it around. I don't want it as harsh as it is here, because he's moving towards you, so this should get softer. So just clean water just to soften, but he does need some shadow, and under the tail as well. See, I've gone back to that, which, like I said, wasn't working fully for me earlier. But now, because I've had a chance to move and concentrate on other areas, I've let it dry, and now I can see what does or doesn't need to be done. Just put a bit of colour on. Brush was a bit too contaminated. Pick up. Just trying to be a little softer with the colour. These colours are so lovely and rich. Right, I think that's a good time for me to stop. Just let me fix something. So I know there's a lot of ways in watercolour which is scary and you think, oh no, I've put it on, I can't go back. But there, I'd taken some of the shadow into the light area of the arm, lift out. Some colours are more difficult, they're staining, but that's why you do colour charts, you do practices, you see which colours lift out. You don't use them if you might have to do lifting out colours. So I think that's a good time to take a break. I'll get a chance to dry it and then I can start to work on the face, more detail, and then just see where I can go from there. So join me in a moment.
Let us bring out the artist in you. If you'd like to learn how to paint or improve your painting, the SAA is here to inform, encourage and inspire you every step of the way. When you become an SAA member, you get so many benefits, including the free bi-monthly newsletter Paint, packed with inspiring step-by-step projects, fascinating articles, and detailed information to get your creative juices flowing. Discounts on over 13,000 art products featured on the SAA website and in the Home Shop catalogue, with free order line and free delivery in the UK mainland. A devoted SAA team on hand to answer your questions and give you the confidence and motivation you need to start painting and develop at a pace that suits you. Plus, a free welcome pack filled with gifts and practical help to get you started, as well as the opportunity to make friends with like-minded people.
Best thing about being a member is the inspiration from the magazines, to be able to purchase things at a very reasonable price.
Yeah, you get the reduction on all the materials, the advice you get.
I could shop from home.
It's a community.
It seemed like a very friendly sort of organisation.
If somebody's thinking of joining, don't spend too long thinking. Just join. They'll love it.
And we're back.
Hello and welcome back. In that short interlude, I've had a chance to look, and there's some areas I want to work on before I go into the head. So here I want to lift out that bit of colour. It's great that this isn't a staining colour. Just want to take that bit back. And here, I've probably put too much colour in. I actually want to take that back and have it much lighter. So all I'm doing is just clean water, synthetic brushes. You'll find a brush that works best for this. This is working well enough for me. May take a little time. If not, I do know a great tool which works well, and that's called the watercolour eraser. So it's a high density sponge, cleans your cookers fabulously, but what it does is you can use it to take back areas of your watercolour really easily without damaging the paper. What you have to do is make sure it's wet and do it gently, because some papers aren't always up for being lifted off. So test your paper, but it's great having tools that you can use to erase or go back and not to worry about things that don't look right. Okay, right. Procrastinating a little bit. Let's get on with the face. So I'm going to use that indigo and some of the, what colour I'm using, burnt umber. It's making a fabulous grey. So, making a nice blue grey. So put the colour on. I'm going to move it. You will find I will layer quite a lot in the face. Just dabbing off because I want to have different tones. I just want to soften in there. Okay. Not worry, I can keep going back. I can get things to work as I like them, or I feel they need to. So just going back. Like I say, I normally like quite a strong colour, and I'm being a little bit more controlled this time. Lifting off, shaping. Now the nose. Just want to keep the dark areas that go over the nose and some highlights. So I'm not going to be overly precise because I do know I'm going to need to come back and darken again. So at the moment you can't see the lift in the lip, but I know it will be there because I know, because I'm layering, using layering techniques, it will come back. So let's just start to bring out the fabulous shapes over the nose. It's got a wrinkle there. Don't suppose the wrinkles, they're folds, aren't they? I must admit, I do call the mother-in-law's dog, I call them his wrinkles. Because he always got a worried looking face. These frown lines here. He's always looking worried, even when you know he's not. So, great expressions these dogs have. So yeah, that looks quite liney at the moment. And again, I'm going to be able to soften those. So what to do with me planning and deciding where I want the colour. If I don't, I forget, and then I move on and I have to come back at a later date. I don't like that, I need a bit more colour. Bit more colour. I don't think his face has enough colour yet, or tones or values. Saw that the brush was getting a little bit spiky. This is because it's drying, but also when you are using, especially the synthetic brushes, which I think are great, if you twist them as you're using them. So look at the colour coming back, too much colour, dab it off. More colour under here. So you can see just each layer is starting to bring out the characters, the characteristic shapes without overloading. So it looks a bit flat, which is fine. I want to let it dry. I want to see how the watercolour dries for me. Go into the ear. So let's make that quite sharp. And you can see it's got a different colour. So putting the colour on, just moving it. What it does is I'm going to bring out some of the other colour behind, just let it blend in. So now that's wet. I'm going to see. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually looking a lot more at features. What shapes, what shadow is it making? I think this helps to just bring it all together. You don't have to be precise over a lot of the work, but I think some areas, just seen a really fun fold in the skin. Just doing maybe some more controlled work instead of the whole just adds a little bit too much to the work. So I'm always talking about different textures. And I just think, just let the medium, there's a little fold around there, do the work for you. Let it dry, see what it's done for you. Okay, let me now start to move off from there. Add a little bit of colour. I'm also, you'll see I'm leaving white areas. This is because I want to keep the light. This is not always that easy. to do. As you can see, I've brought some colours back by lifting off. Right, now let's move on. Okay, let's move on to the face. So it has shape here, has a wrinkle shape. I'm going to go in stronger because I'm starting to fiddle, and you don't want to see me for the next 3 hours just being really tight and fiddling when I tell you to just see what happens. So I'm going to see what happens. I'm enjoying this, which is why I keep forgetting to talk. It's just nice to have a little bit more control, a little bit more of a detailed piece of work, which I don't always. So just changing things a little bit just gives you a bit more of a challenge, but it can be quite fun. So back into there. How much darkness? I don't want to draw these lines too precise. I'm going to do the eye in a minute, but not now. Might do this one though, because so that as strong as I can create that, and I can put the eye on here. And I will put that eye in, but I just want the surrounding areas to dry. So while that's happening, I'm going to now bring out some of those features. What I do like about this is I know it's going to dry a lot softer than I've put it on. You can see I'm using a smaller brush, but it's not overly small. Just goes down here. Bit more darkness in the nose. It can be dots, it doesn't have to be lines. So just walk away from that, and now I'm going to do the eye. Now I do know, looking at these eyes, they've got brown in them as well. I'm just going to give a layer of brown and then add the indigo to strengthen. Because the eyes are a key feature. I'm just darkening. They look at you with those big brown eyes. So a little bit more care, because these are key features. And if it's not dark enough, I can go back in, which I might have to. Now the bit behind the eye, I need to concentrate on, because his eye's not white. It's quite in shadow, but I just need to gently bring the colour and soften that a little bit. And then think about here, this isn't quite right, it's not dark enough. So let's go back in. Bring it round. And just little touches, that little bit of darkness. His frown here. Taking it back over. I think that's working okay. So what am I missing? I think I'm going to start to darken now. So just going to start to really mix up some indigo. and some burnt umber. And now just start to really look at darker features. Doesn't have to be overwhelming, but I think it just needs to bring some more key features back. I'm just, again, texturing the face a little bit. It's a bit too flat. They don't have flat faces like this. They have a few little features. Move on. Right, while I'm doing this, I'm doing glazes. So glazes are putting dark areas over. Sorry, leaning forward. I'm just glazing, just bringing back a few darker areas. Again, it's all to do with the brush control. But I'm also thinking about, does that look right? Does it have enough shadow? Can you feel the muscles? And I think I just need a little bit here. That's not quite enough darkness under here. Still seeing the fabulous colours underneath. Right, I'm not working any more on that. I'm going to just do a little bit in the face here, a little bit of shadowing, because I can feel I've missed it, and under here. Clean water, dabbing off. The ear might need a little bit of work, and then collar. Like I say, if I was doing this in the studio, I have plenty of time to walk away, to think about it, come back, revisit. But to get it finished live, I'm going to miss things that I would have normally have dealt with. Okay, let's just stand back. Fine. Okay, collar. I've just introduced another colours. So cadmium yellow. It's on top. Looks a bit bright at the moment. I'm not overly worried where it goes. And a bit of cadmium red. This is going to look quite bright. But it's quite nice to add a little bit of extra colour in a brown animal. So take that through. Just going to, I can't see on the picture whether the rest of the colour's red, but I'm going to make it so. It's got a tag. Again, not precise. You're going to know it's a tag, or you're going to know where the key features are without me having to draw every little bit. So the sun's shining on it. Don't know what that bit does. If you don't know what the bit does, don't worry about it. I can see here he's got buckles. So let's darken those off. Now, features like the buckles, which you know are quite harsh and solid, they're not soft or moving. Just think about getting sharp lines. It just makes a difference in knowing different textures, as I keep mentioning. I don't know what this bit does, so I'm going to make it a little bit further up. Okay. So just bringing out key features without overwhelmingly thinking about it. Making sure that it's attached to the animal. So I'm going to let that dry and see if I can put some shadow in. It might be dry enough. So now it will be in shadow because the dog's, usually the roll of the neck is underneath. So I just want to soften, take away some of that colour, but not too much. And under here, it's going to be darker. I don't like this. I think it doesn't do anything. So let's just make it do something.
Mind your head.
Tare. Detail, leaning forward. I don't know what it's doing, so I'm going to just add some more colour and maybe a little bit more red here. Okay, that's much better. Don't know what that bit's doing and I don't like it, so I'm going to put it in shadow. There we go. Let's fix that. Tiny detail because I'm going to now start and leave that. I'm going to leave that because I'm going to do the background. So clean water. And again, I've swapped back to the natural hairbrush because I want to add water, and this is the brush that adds water. It holds it, it's going to wet the page enough. I want to be careful about the areas I've left white. I'm still going to retain these. Yes, I forget which is my clean water pot and which isn't, but I've done quite well. One doesn't look too dirty, so I'll use that one. Like I say, the Klinsky Sable is fabulous for holding water, so I know I'm going to get a very wet page. And I can see it. I'm just being a little bit more careful. It's going round the animal where I've kept the highlights. So if I wanted to, I can take these lines, which I might find a little harsh, back. But I don't know if I will. Like I say, I do like different textures. So around the face here that's caught the light. I might not be going up to the edge, but I'll have it wet. Picking up. So this is where that light highlighted area that I painted over disappeared. So I'm going to make sure I remember that again. I have a puddle of water there, so I'm just pushing it to the edge. Up to the dog. And you can see how the initial wash that I put all over the dog and the foreground kind of brings it all together. I'm going to be painting over it a little bit. It's quite warm in here, Gary. It's drying quite quickly. Uh-oh. Okay, well, let's see what happens. I thought I'd gone over this bit. It's looking dry. Nearly done. Okay. Quick look. Right, let's get on with some fun. So I've added French ultramarine and Naples yellow to my palette. So I'm going to do a background. Now, this background is a joy because look at it, it's blurry. So let's just do it blurry. What I'm going to do a little bit more, so I'm going to make sure around my lightest lights I've got a little bit darker because it makes your lights lighter. I'm just bunging colour on. Just making sure it is going up to the dog, so the colour isn't haloing him, apart from the areas I want it to. Okay. And like I say, this is the great thing about watercolour, it does the job for you. Look at the fabulous shapes it's making already. I'm not doing anything. I'm not even mixing, I'm just putting 2 different colours on and they're doing the job for me. So I'm going to make it a little darker, stronger here, because again it brings out the light. Bit of blue, bit of yellow, bit more just blue, bit more blue, a little bit of yellow, more blue. There we go, stronger. Oops. Oops. Bit of blubbing. That's because I'm being impatient. Let's just fix that. If you fix it now while it's wet. Done. Fixed. You notice there I rolled my brush. That's just to get the point back. Right here is where I had my issues. I'm going to make sure that I keep that light from that foot, but just make sure it touches. Okay. Stand back, have a look at areas that may need a little bit of softening. Now, need to come in a little bit here. There's a bit more shape than I've left. Standing back. Maybe want to darken a little bit. The reason I'm standing back is I can't see. I cannot see how dark or light it is. So I'm just standing back away from the glare of the light. No, I'm going to start fluffing. So this area I'm going to do something because it's too strong. Because he's running towards you. I want to blur this off again. So I'm going to use a wet brush and I'm going to just soften. And what I hope will happen, because it did when I tried it last time, is it's going to cause cauliflowers. And I'll show you those if it happens. Might not, because it may not be dry yet. Just softening. Not quite as harsh. I could use a spray for this, but what I want to do, it's not cause. You said it wouldn't cause cauliflowers, Gary.
You can never get a cauliflower.
You never get a cauliflower when you want one. So just softening this area off, bringing him, less detail, more detail, pushing him forward. Okay, I'm going to need to dry for my next step, and I'm nearly finished. Nope, not one. So just drying off, and you'll see how it will suddenly just flatten once it's dried. It's great. Get as dry as I can. So what I can do is dab off the pools around the edge. Just makes it easier to dry. And I'm going to need to have this quite dry. This would probably be a good time to walk away, let it dry naturally, come back. And then you can see areas you may need to work on. Nearly finished. See how it just starts to flatten? You know then you've dried it. Right, that will be enough for now. Normally I'd make sure it was really bone dry. So, lovely back. Look how fabulous that background. All I did was splosh it on, water and paint. Look how fabulous that background's come forward. What I want to do now is just create a little bit of foreground texture. So I'm going to do some grasses. So I was talking about how you hold your brush in different ways. So just using the tip, squiggling it around, using it at different angles. This is a slightly bigger synthetic brush, and I'm making sure that the grasses go in and over the dog, because it's part of it. It's part of. Don't want to do too much in the here because it's softer, but just give a hint. What I was trying to do was trying to create a back run or a cauliflower where a little bit was happening there, where a slightly dry background, you put clean water on or a lot wetter pigment, and it repels the pigment and creates these back runs, they're called, or cauliflowers, they're known as, but it didn't work. It works when you don't want it to often, but when you're actually trying to do it, it's really difficult because you're thinking about it. Okay. Again, I'm thinking about it, whether it's too much, whether at the moment they're all in a line, so let's just move the shapes around a little bit. Is it strong enough? Is it enough? Again, another layer. Using the brush just to pick up the texture. No, don't go into that bit. That's been the bane. Maybe I've overdone that. That's going to bug me. So I'm just going to take a little bit up here. Just making sure your texture is consistent. Doesn't have to be. So probably a final thing I'll do is I'll just stop, just be a little bit more control, a bit more thought about what areas need working on.
Mind your head.
Sorry. So what I'm going to do is, I think that's enough from me. As much as I want to keep going, I'm just going to have to stop. So I hope you enjoyed that. So to celebrate the Chinese New Year, the Year of the Dog, here is Steve the Puggle. You could spend a lot more time on, but I think in the hour, hopefully that has produced a nice looking dog. Watercolour showing you how to use your brushes, how you can change, how different brushes give different techniques. So hope that was fun. Have a go. If you don't want to start big with a whole dog, just start with the eyes, start with the nose, and try different hairs, the long-haired or short-haired, and just have fun. So join me next week for another live demonstration.